Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving into something that, let's be honest, affects all of us right in the wallet. We're talking about inflation, but more importantly, we're talking about the antidotes, the policies used to fight it. So let's get right into it.
You know that feeling, right? You go to the grocery store, you fill up your gas tank, and it just feels like your money is shrinking. Like every dollar just doesn't stretch as far as it did last year or even last month. Well, that's not just a feeling. That is the very real effect of inflation.
So what exactly is inflation in technical terms? Well, here's the textbook definition. It's a persistent increase in the general price level of pretty much everything. It's this economic force that slowly, quietly eats away at the value of your cash. It means that every single dollar you have buys a little bit less today than it did yesterday.
But here's the really important part, the good news. We're not just helpless victims here. This isn't some unstoppable force of nature. Policymakers actually have a whole toolkit, a set of what our source calls antidotes, which are specific strategies designed to get those rising prices back under control.
Now, the first two tools we're going to look at are the big ones, the heavy hitters. We're talking about monetary and fiscal policies. Think of these as the main levers that central banks and governments pull to steer the entire economy.
And it's really important to get the difference between these two. On one hand, you've got monetary policy. That's the job of the central bank, and their main focus is controlling the supply of money. On the other hand, you've got fiscal policy. That's wielded by the government, and they do it through their power to tax people and spend money.
Okay, so how does a central bank actually do that? How do they control the money supply? Well, two of their biggest moves are raising interest rates and selling government securities, like bonds. Both of these are designed to do one thing: make money more expensive to borrow.
And that move sets off a whole chain reaction. See, when the central bank hikes interest rates, it suddenly costs more for you to get a mortgage on a house or for a business to take out a loan to expand. And what does that do? It cools down spending across the entire economy, which helps put the brakes on inflation.
Now, let's flip over to the government side of the toolkit, fiscal policy. The goal here is pretty simple: reduce the total demand for stuff in the economy. They can do this by increasing taxes, which leaves us all with a little less cash to spend, or the government itself can just cut back on its own spending projects.
So a real-world example might be a government deciding to postpone building a new highway. By not pumping all those millions or billions of dollars into the economy, it helps get rid of what economists call excess demand. That's the classic inflation scenario of too many dollars chasing too few goods.
All right, so everything we've talked about so far has been about cooling down demand, pumping the brakes. But what if you came at the problem from the complete opposite direction? Well, that's where supply-side policies come into play. This is less about slowing things down and more about making the whole economic engine run bigger, better, and faster.
The thinking here is actually pretty simple, but really powerful. If you invest in new technology, better infrastructure like roads and ports, and you help your workforce get more skilled and educated, well, you can just make more stuff. And when the supply of goods and services goes up to meet or even past the demand, prices naturally stop climbing. It's more of a long-term fix.
Okay, now we need to talk about the break glass in case of emergency option. This is the last resort. If inflation is truly spiraling out of control, a government might turn to a very direct and, frankly, very controversial tool: price and wage controls.
This is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's the government stepping in and literally saying, nope, you can't charge more than $2 for a gallon of milk, or companies are not allowed to give raises above 2% this year. It's a brute force attempt to just stop inflation by making it illegal.
But, and this is a huge but, you have to see this warning right here from our source. This is not a standard tool. It is a drastic measure for truly desperate times because it can cause all sorts of new problems, like shortages when companies stop making things, or even black markets. That's why it's reserved for what the source calls extreme inflation situations.
So after looking at all these different antidotes in the toolkit, what's the big picture here? I think the most important takeaway is this: there is no single magical solution. There's no magic bullet that can just slay the inflation dragon overnight.
And here's a quick recap that lays it all out. You've got monetary policy, driven by the central bank to control the money supply. Fiscal policy, from the government to reduce total demand. Supply-side solutions to increase production. And finally, those drastic price controls. Each one has a different player and a different goal.
But here's the crucial point, the thing that ties it all together.
The most successful approaches almost always use a combination of these tools. Our source makes it crystal clear that real, effective coordination between the government and the central bank is absolutely essential if you want to achieve price stability that actually lasts.
And all of this leaves us with one final, really big question to chew on. We've just laid out this entire toolkit. We know what the antidotes are. So why then is the actual process of curing inflation almost always so difficult and so painful for so many people? Something to think about. Thanks for watching.